Hi, my name is Yasmin Tarehi, and this is Startup Confessionals, where we interview startup founders and entrepreneurs in the Middle East and Africa. We'll learn about some of the biggest lessons these founders discovered on their journey from the personal to the professional and share how they keep themselves motivated. Today's episode is with Katie Wachsberger, the co-founder of Dana, an Abu Dhabi-based accelerator and funding platform for women-led startups in desert tech, including the sectors of agritech, foodtech, water solutions, renewable energy, circular economy, and waste management. Dana offers startups a tailor-made program, including hands-on mentorship, business model construction, proof of concept and feasibility testing, corporate design partnerships, AI implementation, go-to-market, and more. And she's passionate about the technology already embedded in the way of our natural environment and believes in the endless capabilities of female founders. So thank you so much for joining us today, Katie.
Thank you, Yasmin, for having me.
So, Katie, I'd love to kick it off and ask you what the value proposition is of Dana, why you decided to start it, and also what Dana means in Arabic for those who are maybe not an Arabic-speaking listener.
Sure. So I'm actually one of three co-founders of Dana. One of my co-founders, Haj, was working on a startup for quite some time with a woman named Dana Salah from Ramallah, who in 2020 was tragically killed in an accident. And their mentor, Shirley Shachar, who was actually working with them for quite some time on their startup, decided that they were going to go into business and create something in Dana's name. So that's when they started to work on the project, building an acceleration program for female founders and women-led startups in the realm of desert tech, which is Shirley's sort of her specialty. And then I got involved from the UAE and, really saw the potential of those sectors, specifically in the GCC, noticing the trend towards increased emphasis on food security, the growing importance and the growing value of the agritech sector worldwide, but specifically in developing markets. And just seeing the success of women-led startups specifically from the region and the resilience of female founders from some of the countries that we target in terms of our outreach and go-to-market strategies, it kind of seemed like a natural fit. So essentially what we do is we work really hands-on with startups from around the MENA region. We have startups in our cohort from the UAE, Palestine, Israel, Egypt, and Saudi. And we work very closely with them in terms of developing solutions that are simultaneously practical and can be implemented on the corporate level, that can be implemented also on the B2G level in terms of sustainability solutions, solutions for the challenges of food security that the region face, solutions for the challenges of waste management that are becoming more and more prominent and more dangerous, and doing so in ways that are obviously also creating more value in those sectors. We're very fascinated to see the food tech sector and the agritech sector specifically growing exponentially every single year. They remain pretty untouched in our region. There's a lot of lip service being paid to these notions of sort of food security, desert agriculture, but we still haven't seen these sectors really grow to even half of their full potential. So, that's really what we're about.
Wow, so amazing. I actually had not heard of the term desert tech before, and I just love that. And the umbrella of all the different kind of verticals that you're focused on is, I think, incredibly important for where we are today with climate change especially. So I'm just such a huge fan.
I mean, we also, we believe a lot in branding, so we believe in sort of branding our own sector, but also it's a deep belief that the desert is very much a resource, and it's not just this massive and growing phenomenon in our world that we all need to be sort of terrified of. It's actually a massive source of potential in terms of, studying how the desert functions as an ecosystem, the kind of potential for renewable energy that lies in the desert, the agricultural untapped potential of the desert. I think that we're tapping into a much larger trend by using this term. If you see like the agricultural incentives that are being rolled out now in Egypt, in Sinai, in Morocco, in Iraq, in Saudi, like it's incredible to see how everyone's realizing that we don't have the luxury to just leave that land to stand arid and to leave that potential untapped. We need to start to figure out how we can cultivate the soil, cultivate the sand, and turn it into something that can actually flourish and feed our civilizations.
Wow, so fascinating. And can we double click on maybe some of the companies that are in your accelerator that you would like to highlight for some of the innovative work that they're doing with respect to things like desert tech and food innovation and some of the other industries that you mentioned?
Yeah, absolutely. There are so many. I'll start with one that is sort of particularly desert-y, just because we talking about the desert. So we have one company called Datetanol. They're taking waste from the date production, um, essentially dates that are not marketable because they're not high enough quality, but also date waste from the palms themselves, and converting them into various different end uses, including ethanol as a biofuel, ethanol as a medical product, and also bioplastics. So that's a really exciting one for us. It's not only innovative on the technological level, but it's also innovative in terms of how the economic, how the business structure is planned. Um, how the business plan is structured. So essentially, dates are one of the commodities that our region is investing in more and more because it's relatively easy to grow, and you can irrigate dates to some extent with salt water. But the consumer market isn't growing together with the supply. So, it's one of those products that it really requires a kind of um, creative approach to thinking about new end uses, especially as the market grows and the supply and the demand doesn't really follow. We also have an incredible company that's coming out of Gaza, and they were the first solar implementation company in the Gaza Strip, and they recently scaled up to Saudi, and we're working with them on creating basically a tech layer for solar panels that make the maintenance and energy efficiency accessible to developing markets. So usually when you have like large corporates or government entities going into some of these developing markets and installing solar panels, if you go back to these sites a few months later, you see that they've been completely abandoned or they aren't properly maintained. So we're helping to develop an AI-based user interface for markets where maintenance and upkeep is something that needs to sort of be uh, brought into the workforce as well. We have a company in Abu Dhabi that is doing compost development from coffee waste. So she's working with one of the largest coffee chains in the UAE to up use it. It's like a circular economy. Various uses for coffee waste, including compost and agricultural substrates. We have another company that's doing polymer organic essential oil based pesticide solution for indoor farming and greenhouses, which is especially exciting because in 2022, the US is going to outlaw about 40% of pesticides. So yeah, that's just a few, just some of our stars.
Wow, I'm so impressed. All these companies sound incredible. And how do you go about selecting some of the founders in your accelerator? What's your due diligence process like, and what are you really looking for?
So, I guess any investor will tell you that you bet on the rider, not on the horse, right? So the first thing that we look for is resilience, creativity. Being founders ourselves, we know the type of shit that you have to go through in order to sort of see any kinds of like profit or success, or especially as a woman and especially in the region. So we really look for resilience. We look for that sort of like spark in the eye, when someone really cares about what they do, and you can tell that they're doing it not only for the money, but also because they really believe in the product. So that's sort of the first thing. From there, especially in our sectors that are so time intensive and capital intensive, um, it's like there's going to be at least 2 3 pivots before anything really comes out of that. So it's really about the founder first and foremost, but second of all, we are also investors, so we look for companies that we think have real go to market potential. We look for companies that we think are easily adaptable sort of into the corporate environment, in the agricultural spheres and the food production spheres. They're very different than deep tech or any of any sort of digital AI software based sectors, because these are very hands-on, hardware based. There's a lot of prototype development that goes into this. There's a lot of proof of concept that goes into this. We have our own beta sites where we actually carry out physical feasibility testing with farmers, with supply chain, with packaging houses. So we look for products that are relatively simple, that on the technological level don't require too much pivoting, too much more prototype development. And then we're really interested in the potential of developing markets. So, for example, some of the markets that we see the most significant potential in terms of agriculture, in terms of food production, are Egypt, Morocco, KSA, India, Pakistan. So we look for products that are relevant in these developing markets. So, precision agriculture is amazing in terms of what it can do, but in terms of how it can be adopted and integrated into some of these developing markets where, a lot of the cooperatives or farmers or large food production corporates aren't or cannot, maybe they just don't have the capacity in some cases to really adopt complex tech solutions. So one of our startups, for example, has a hydrogen organic spray that triples the shelf life of fruits and vegetables. And it's especially interesting for us, not only because of the chemistry and what it does, but because it's manufactured in a very cost efficient and material efficient manner. So it doesn't have to be constantly imported. It can actually be produced and manufactured in some of these economies, in some of these markets, and it can be applied by anyone, just like, by hand. It doesn't require like a special facility. So these are some of the things that we really look for, simplicity, easily implementable, and creative, and then also when it comes to sustainability, like it's very important for us to see that um, the 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 production of the actual product, or some of the um, processes that it needs to go through, a lot of times those processes themselves are quite energy efficient, or fuel efficient. So we also like to make sure that we're also walking the walk, and that the technology that we work with is not just green in terms of the marketing, but is also green in terms of the actual outcome in terms of carbon footprint.
Wow. Can you walk me through how long some of these companies stay within the accelerator? Is there like a jumping off point where if they've reached a certain kind of growth stage that they sort of move out of the accelerator? Like what's sort of the sweet spot that you guys focus on? I know that you mentioned, proof of concept and go to market. So it seems like that's more on the early stage, but yeah, I'm curious, like how does that work and how do you know when people are sort of ready to go off into their own space?
Sure. I mean, so we're very bespoke in the way that we build our program. Each startup it's like a very different contract with us, um, and it can go up until investment. So, you know, in the worst case scenario, we work with a startup for a few months. It was nice, and then we sort of part ways at the end of that. Um, in some cases, we'll offer the startup seed funding sort of towards the end of our acceleration contract with them. And sometimes we'll actually extend the acceleration period together with the seed funding. And then for the startups that are coming out of the program that have received seed funding and we see them as great investment opportunities, then we also invest in them. So, they can stay with Dana, up until they exit if we become investors. But in other cases, it's just sort of until the end of our contract, which is determined at the beginning of our work together. And there are also startups that are great, and we don't invest in them, we just sort of maintain a really friendly, supportive relationship after they graduate the program, and we have that's also fine. It really looks different with each company, and for some companies we just don't have anything we can offer them anymore, and we sort of just let them go on their way. But yeah, it's very bespoke, and it's very tailor made really to the needs of each company and each founder.
So I also want to talk about how the pandemic may have shifted the way that you operate Dana.
Yeah, it's a great.
And yeah, because I'm sure that was probably a huge impact on some of these industries.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually fascinating because, well, this project was born in the pandemic. And it's so funny because I actually didn't meet one of my co-founders until about 3 months into the project, and when I met her, she was like, "Oh my God, you're so short." I was like, I guess I give off an impression of a tall person on Zoom, but I'm like 5'3". But anyway, um, but yeah, I mean, it's so interesting. This whole project was born on Zoom, and we live in different countries, and we have stakeholders, we have startups, we have investors, we have beta sites, like all throughout the Middle East. We're registered and based in Abu Dhabi, but we don't. It doesn't really mean anything in terms of geographic location. We really like to take advantage of the fact that COVID has sort of ushered in an era of making it very acceptable that we can do business across borders on Zoom, and especially for women. One of my partners has 4 kids. Like, the fact that she's able to run this multinational venture while taking care of, like, all of the noise in her house is just amazing. I mean, it offers completely new opportunities for women. We have 2 founders who are new moms who have given birth in the past 6 months, and if they're gonna complete their tasks at 4 a.m. in the morning or at 4 p.m. in the afternoon, like, I don't care. It's like, I sort of think that this digitization has increased everyone's flexibility, and in a lot of cases have allowed for women to sort of maintain some of the domestic responsibilities or social responsibilities that they still desire to maintain while becoming founders. So we love it. We love this new way of life. I personally, I do a lot of home agriculture. I have my own, garden on my rooftop in Dubai. And the fact that I can take calls while I'm like, shoveling the compost, I think it's huge. I think it's a great, for whoever chooses to see it like this, I think it can be a huge advantage for mental health. And bring a lot of new players sort of into the game.
So, Katie, I want to talk a little bit about the profile of the founders that have been brought into the accelerator. Are they scientists? Like, have a lot of them do they have like the background in these industries, or have you seen more of like an entrepreneurial type of founder come through? Like, what does the profile generally look like?
It's quite diverse. One of our founders is like a very weathered professor at a top university in Abu Dhabi, and she spent a lot of time doing research on her topic before she decided to go and turn it into a company. And when she did, it was like a lot of that sort of basic business knowledge was missing. And we were really happy to sort of be able to provide support on that end. On the other hand, we have founders who came from the prop tech industry, and they spent their whole careers doing something totally different until they noticed that circular economy is up and coming, and this is where money is to be made. And they were like, okay, we're gonna do a waste management startup. Cool. And then it's we sort of get to put our heads together and think about where this founders gaps are, and how we can tap into our network in the various ecosystems that we're sort of based in, and how we can bring expertise from other parts. And I think what's really fun and challenging, and also in some ways an outcome of the pandemic, is in some cases we're sort of able to bring co-founders or team members from other parts of the region onto teams, and then we give a specific startup an advantage in a market that maybe they wouldn't have had access to if they didn't have a team member from that market. So that's been something really fascinating to watch play out.
And do you have folks from like different, I guess, continents, or is it kind of, relatively similar time zone? Because I'm just curious how that would work.
I mean, everyone's in MENA, so Jordan can be far away from Morocco in some people's calculations, but you and I are talking from the West Coast and the UAE, so it's not that bad. I mean, we can make it work.
Right, exactly. So, Katie, can you talk to us about how Dana was? I know the story behind how it was created, but how did you bootstrap the company? Did you get your own? Like, how did that work? Like, how were you able to secure the funding? Yeah.
I mean, it's a great question, because when we got this whole thing started, it was like, we're going to build an accelerator. Great idea. Let's do it. And then we were like, oh, well, there isn't like one good business model for an accelerator. And we very quickly realized that if we don't invest, there isn't a serious value proposition, that we need to have more skin in the game, and we need to have equity in the companies. And, that realization was a very important one. So anyone out there listening who's thinking about starting an accelerator, go for the VC right away together with the accelerator. It's really important. But in the beginning, when we started, we definitely bootstrapped. We definitely, worked for free for quite a long time, which, if you don't love what you do, is a problem. And we were lucky to get corporate sponsors on board as well. We had sponsorship from Microsoft. We had sponsorship from Agricora, a leading agritech company. We had a few other sponsors, just from here and there, that sort of allowed us to kick it off. We did some friends and family funding as well. And then we were really lucky to be able to raise from a few amazing angels like Joanne Wilson, um, and a few others who sort of gave us the big boost. And yeah, family offices from the region, from the US. And the real push came when we started to also raise money for seed funding, because our investors wanted to see, us also become investors. So I think there's a big appetite to see more women investing. There's a big appetite to see more funding going to women-led startups and not just support, acceleration, and incubation. And I think that if that's something that someone's bringing to the table, a lot of women investors, a lot of powerful women from the ecosystem really appreciate the importance of bringing funding, because in the end of the day, female founders, they're our biggest, and not to be a cliche, but the biggest glass ceiling is still fundraising. So the kind of support that we can give these female founders is always going to be limited if we can't actually bring checks to the table.
Right. Yeah, that's unfortunately still even the case in Silicon Valley, although it's changed a little bit, but really not as much as it should. Uh, so, Katie, I want to move a little bit into the confessional part of the show, and we're actually almost at time. I can't believe it. This has been so fascinating to hear from you. But I want to hear about how you keep yourself motivated and also how you deal with those tough times. I mean, you briefly spoke about how you worked for free at first, and bootstrapped and really just believed in the vision. But how do you motivate yourself? And then how do you kind of like push forward when things get especially tough?
It's it's a good question. And anyone who has started their own company knows that those moments can be really, really hard. Um, I have to say that it's all in the team. Like, if it wasn't for the incredible women I work with, and there's so much diversity in our team. Like, my two partners come from completely different worlds than I do, and we're just such different people. But I have endless respect for who they are and what they've put on the line for this company. I oftentimes feel like their sacrifice was much riskier in a lot of ways than mine. So the fact that I feel that I've made a commitment to these women, I feel responsible for their success as well as mine. It's not just about me anymore. I just, we always joke about the fact that it's like we're married. We have a founders agreement. It's like it's the same thing as a freaking ring. It's like I owe these women a lot, and I feel like that relationship and that trust that we have and that commitment that we've made is a really big source of motivation for me. I care more about their success than I do about my own. Like, sometimes it gets so tough, I'm just like, you know what? If it was just my company, I'd just leave. But you know what? I owe this to them. So that's a really big factor. I think that having partners that you trust and that you believe in and that you want to see them bring their gift to the world. I think that that's a really, really important thing to have in a team. And also, I really believe in what we're doing. Like, I love the idea that women are the ones who are going to bring a new way of life to our region, that it's women who, are showing the rest of the society how to grow the plants in a more, lean, intelligent, and sustainable way. I love the idea that it's women who are saying, no, like, that's not garbage, that's a resource. I think that it's in our nature to think like that. I think it's in our nature to think about the collective. And every time I see one of our founders sort of rising to success, it's like it all feels worth it. Those days are just like nothing when I get to see our founders just sort of, whenever they get have an interview or whenever, and I'm gonna send them to you, right? But
Yes.
whenever I see them sort of making it, it's like, wow, this is really what it's about, and the effect that they have in their family, in their community, in their society. Um, I don't know. I mean, that's the kind of region that I want to live in. So I'm really proud to be part of that.
Wow, Katie, that's so inspiring, and I'm so moved by that comment. Yeah, I absolutely would love to interview many of your founders at Dana. I just think that it would be incredible. And what are some of the ways people can get in touch with you, learn more about you, and learn more about Dana? Like, what would you say is your call to action to our audience?
So anyone who's interested in jumping on board, whether as a mentor, as an intern, as a startup, you know, we talk to everyone who wants to talk to us. So please reach out. We're on LinkedIn, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, kind of soon. And you can always reach out to me individually. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm very accessible. I love to, speak to new people, and always up to learn. There's never a limit to how much we can know. So I'm always happy to learn from anyone who wants to share. And we're doing a lot of programs. We have a hackathon coming up. We have a women's angel course for Emirati women coming up. We're working on a bunch of events around agriculture. We have training courses coming up on our beta sites. So, just get in touch. We love to talk. We love to schmooze. So reach out.
Amazing, amazing. And we'll leave the link to the company in the show notes. And then one final question. I always ask my guests this. What is a book that you're either reading now or read recently that has inspired you?
Wow, so many. But just because we spoke with him this week, I'll say Sir Ronald Cohen's Impact. Anyone who's interested in impact investment, I know that there are a lot of different ways to speak about impact and to speak about impact investing and the metrics of impact measurement. But what's great about his book is that he really gives some concrete examples about how creating impact can be just as much of a value proposition as generating capital, which is something that in a world where, food, resources, water, land are all things that are becoming scarce. I think we can start to measure our success not only on how much capital has been generated, but also, how we're able to bring more resources into our economy. So I really recommend that book. It's an easy read, and Ronnie's a great supporter of Dana.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Katie.
Thank you,
this
Yasmin.
is so
really
wonderful.
Yeah.
Likewise. This is so
and
inspired.
Thank you for your work. I have to say, I'm a big fan of the show, and I love, the kind of diversity that you bring on the show, and just bringing more attention to what's happening in the region, especially from the West Coast. Bravo. It's really awesome. So thank you too.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. I sit on the board of Tech Wadi, so we do a lot of work between Silicon Valley and the Middle East, and I'm really also passionate about bringing as much support to the region as possible from a tech perspective. So thank you so much, and all the best.
Take care.
For our audience, thanks for joining and for listening to Startup Confessionals.